Labour sleaze is government sleaze. Let's take the party out of this talk. Can resonate deeply with the historical baggage of political integrity and public trust. And Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, has found himself under scrutiny, not just for his political manoeuvring, but for his personal associations, and particularly with Lord Ali, and the amount of money that he seems to have taken from Lord Ali in a rather casual way. And the scrutiny is amplified by the media, particularly outlets like GBNews, which seems to have broken a story in a very disingenuous and scurrilous way this morning. And they've delved into rumours surrounding Keir Starmer's relationship with figures like Lord Wahid Ali. And this morning, at about 8 o'clock, Isabel Oakeshott on GBNews made an announcement. And I keep GBNews on. I have one or two computers while I'm working. At the moment, I've got real problems with tendinitis, and I'm not working in a very focused way. So I'm afraid I've been lingering over television screens and stuff. And so I was, in fact, watching this rather than hearing it in the background. And various people have said to me, why haven't you talked about it? I haven't talked about it because I've been wondering whether or not it's appropriate to do so. And Isabelle Oakeshott is known for her controversial approach. And her discussion this morning with Mike Graham or something, he's not a man I particularly warm to. But he's an individual. Well, it's just, yes, I think he's not a man I particularly warm to is a perfectly good way of putting it. I hope I got the name right. But in the process, it wasn't his fault. No, it wasn't his fault. What was I going to say there? I was going to say that he got Isabel Oakeshott to say something inappropriate. That isn't true. Mick Graham wasn't doing the inappropriate questioning. It was Isabel Oakeshott. It was all her. Isabel Oakeshott was doing her thing. And she wanted to see something much more salacious behind Starmer. And behind Starmer's statement about let's pretend. He said this morning, this joke about Lord Ali at the Wall Street Investors Summit. I'd like to pretend that this is my apartment. And various people say, is that a laughing matter? And other people saying, it sounds like entitlement. It's still sleaze and lies when you say, let's pretend this is mine. That's what the thief says when he's caught. Well, I wanted to pretend it was mine. Well, that's still theft. And if it's not theft, it's certainly deception. It's not honesty. It's not authenticity. And we would expect authenticity and honesty from the person who's in charge of our country. And that was really where I thought she was going, but she didn't stop there. And she went on to develop this idea that there might be an implication of a discrepancy between Starmer's public persona and his private dealings, and the insinuation, whether intentionally or not, hinted not only at deceit, not only at impropriety, but at what I suppose President Putin would have called an irregular lifestyle. If not now, then certainly in the fairly immediate past. And the media's portrayal of these issues, particularly when discussed by figures like Mick Graham and Oakeshott, tends to add a layer of moral judgment that seems excessive or self-righteous. Graham's stance, coupled with Oakeshott's reputation for handling sensitive information irresponsibly, as highlighted by her role in leaking Matt Hancock's messages, disseminating Matt Hancock's private diary entries, there was a lot of dissemination going on with Matt Hancock, casts a shadow over the credibility of her critique. But the problem with Oakeshott is, although she is irresponsible, although she is indiscreet, I'm afraid she's generally fairly truthful and fairly on the button. I wouldn't tell her anything. I wouldn't confide in Isabelle Oakeshott. It'd be all over the tabloids within seconds. Oakeshott is not trustworthy, not because she lies, but because she's shown a propensity to divulge confidential information without regard to or for the consequences. And this episode raises broader questions about political smear campaigns, the ethics of journalism. Don't forget that Isabel Oakeshott is the other half of Richard Tice, the Reform UK person, on the other side of the benches in the House of Commons. Isabel Oakeshott is not a journalist. She's the left hand of a political campaign. If Richard Tice is the voice, Isabel Oakeshott is the hand job. And the episode raises questions about the ethics of journalism and the line between legitimate scrutiny and character assassination. And the focus on Starmer's associations, especially when framed as outing by figures of questionable ethics, risks overshadowing more substantive political discussions. It seems less about holding power to account and more about sensationalism and personal vendettas. I'm going to play you a bit of this morning's Isabel Oakeshott discourse. I'm going to play you it as sound only because I don't want to suddenly find myself under a cloak of threats that I've misused GBNews footage but I'll put up a picture and you can listen to some of the sound here.
And that's what people hate. They hate the hypocrisy. They hate the perception of these entitled politicians having a great time. And I tell you what else they hate. They hate the lies. And it's quite obvious to me that there have been lies and that there are still lies. So in itself, that setup of the message during lockdown from Lord Ali's flat that was made to look like Keir Starmer's own property, that was a lie.
And that is, for me, possibly the worst and most damaging aspect of this story. That this is a guy who is leading our country, who is the representative of the United Kingdom at the United Nations. You know, he's not the head of state, but he's, you know, the leader of the nation. He has lived a complete lie. I mean, I've said earlier today in the show, I don't know what he gets up to with Lord Ali. I don't know what he does for hours and hours on end at this flat that they seem to be happy to share.
So this is the first sign of something more serious from Mick Graham. This lugubrious. I mean, he puts on such a serious face. This sententious, this lamentation of antipathy, this finger wagging persiflage, but it's going to get much worse. It's going to get significantly worse. And I find this so distasteful, so superior, so unpleasant.
But in the past 24 hours alone, here's what we know. Wes Streeting has admitted that he hosted a fundraising event at Lord Ali's penthouse where the guests included Sir Ian McKellen. He declared the value of the event as £4,600. I would question that because they keep...
So why is he mentioning Sir Ian McKellen? He declared the value of the event. This seems to be an outing about inappropriate sleaze, about payments, about money. But Sir Ian McKellen, again, this is like turning a screw. Just keep that name in mind, because this is a character assassination in a not terribly subtle way, and a sort of 1990s way, and this man deserves to be outed for what he is doing. This is such a nasty piece of journalism. And I will point out, I've thought very, very carefully about whether or not I expose this. And I thought, well, it's already out there. I have to pick this up and I have to run with it and I have to analyse what is there and why it's wrong. So remember, Ian McKellen, that name dropped in for no particular reason but to add to the ammunition of what is coming.
How worthwhile this all is. Meanwhile, more importantly, perhaps, and perhaps more worryingly, Labour appointed a climate envoy who's called Rachel Kite, who sits on the advisory board of Quadrature, a climate foundation set up by Quadrature Capital, a company that gave £4 million to Labour just before the election, wasn't declared. They're a company who would appear to go against every principle the Labour Party has, if they have any principles. And meanwhile, we now find out that not only did Keir Starmer film various messages to the public pretending he was at home, he actually filmed his tribute to the Queen after she died in the same penthouse.
So just in case you're in any doubt, that non sequitur there is very significant. You think, oh my goodness, he's going off about sleaze and about money, but no, he's coming back to the penthouse and he's priming Isabel Oakeshott for her thing. She is going to go in for the kill now. Just listen.
I mean, this is unbelievable to me.
So I think there is something bigger going on here, and it's annoying because I don't know what it is. And I know that the lobby of political journalists at Westminster feel the same. All of us instinctively feel that there is some big fact here that we're not being made.
I mean, I'm going to ask the question because nobody else will. Is it some kind of sex thing, do you think?
So there have long been rumours about Keir Starmer's private life, and they certainly aren't to do with any kind of doubts over his sexuality, if I can put it delicately. Okay. They are to do with his past and what the shape of his family really looks like. And it wouldn't be fair to go any further than that, but this is an open secret at Westminster that those question marks have been around for a long time, and papers have been extraordinarily restrained in not publishing any of that speculation. And even whether they've got, maybe there are publications that have more information than I'm aware of, they've been restrained. Why? Because there's been a strong feeling that it's not in the public interest. And the bar for that these days for the press is really quite high. It's a whole different world to where we were in the John Major years. All those sleaze scandals were really just to do with cabinet ministers having affairs, having mistresses. Right. That doesn't wash anymore in modern day Britain. People actually don't care. If one of our cabinet ministers has got a relationship with someone else, who cares?
Well, on the face of that may be true, but Isabelle Oakeshott seems to care a great deal. She cared a great deal about Vicky Pryce. She cared a great deal about, Kim Darroch, the British ambassador. She cared a great deal. Actually, the Darroch emails, there was a story in The Guardian which suggested that she had acquired those emails by doing some sort of Mata Hari thing with either Nigel Farage or Aaron Banks, and she got quite upset. The Guardian removed the offending sentence, which suggested that she'd used bedroom tricks to get this information, and she said this was demonstrably false and extraordinarily sexist. But if you just take a look at the number of people who have been savaged by Oakeshott, this is a person one should be very, very worried about. And she she was the person who co-wrote the story about David Cameron with Michael Ashcroft about his association with a pig, Even if later on she said that the source could have been deranged, she still thought the source was worth promoting and the story was worth publicising because it's a good story. And this is the problem. She's, she knows all about the Russian stuff with Brexit, or at least she thinks she does. And she seems unbelievably, what's the word? Louche, I think. Louche.
Except if it has some bearing on legislation, if it has some bearing on the conduct of policy or laws that are being made. I mean, that's when it starts to become a problem, isn't it?
So you have to have a strong public interest defence to publish this stuff. And I think to date, the media has felt that there hasn't been a strong public interest defence. And fairness to Sir Keir Starmer, whatever may or may not be going on in his past or in his private life, he has never posed with his family or children and acted like they're the perfect family and that he's the perfect dad and all of that, perfect husband, etc., etc. He hasn't done that. So there hasn't up until now been any kind of hypocrisy public interest defence. I just wonder whether that is now shifting. As I say, I don't want to kind of throw mud out there because I don't know much detail, but I think it's fair to our viewers because we shouldn't have little clubs of journalists that know stuff and politicians that know stuff, but we're in the know and you're not. So I'm happy to put it out there that it is an open secret at Westminster that there is something about Keir Starmer's past that is not in the public domain. And it may or may not have a bearing on all this Lord Ali stuff. It may be totally tangential, irrelevant, may not even be true. But if I were him and there is a secret, I would just get it out there now because this is getting dangerous territory for him. And I don't think that voters will care about his private life as long as he's not conflicted, as long as he's not being hypocritical, as long as he's not abused his position anyway.
Well, a bit late for all that, isn't it? I mean, he's done all of those things.
Get the story out. That would be my advice to Downing Street. If there is more to say, whatever it may be, then just get ahead of it. And the rest of us can then pack up and move on to another target.
Yeah. Well, I'm not moving yet, so we'll keep...
So in essence, I hope you agree, this real story